3, 2, 1. All right, everybody. In my search to perfect my settings in the Brunner yoke in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, I scoured the internet and everything, looking for any kind of assistance to learn the software and all that. It's kind of hard to find anything that really goes through a whole lot of the settings, so I thought I would go ahead and show you how I went about doing it. I've had my Brunners now for about going on 4+ years, I guess. I do have the CLS2SIM and the rudder pedals. So anyway, I thought I'd give a rundown into how I set a particular aircraft. In this case, let's just start with a general aviation aircraft. This one being a turboprop TBM 850 will be the profile. I'll go through here and show you what I did and how I dialed it in. I really like the settings I've got with it at this point in time. Occasionally I do make a tweak to it here and there. And I have uploaded this profile up to the page there on the Brunner website. So if you care to try it out, just go get it and drop me a note. Let me know if you like it or not. Anyway, so when I pick up a new airplane, I go and I read as much as I can about the real one. You know, the type of flight controls it has. You know, hydraulics or cable. Try to find out as much as I can. You know, about the aircraft controls. You know, if they just all I can learn about it. So then I can go in and differentiate, you know, how I want to approach the setup. Kind of like, you know, most of the GA stuff is going to be cable driven, and your bigger airlines will be fly-by-wire or hydraulic type stuff. Occasionally you'll get like a business jet, you know, that's going to be cable. But then like a CRJ, after doing some research and talking, questioning real-world pilots, you know, doing videos and stuff, ask them about those systems, and they answered, you know, and like the CRJ's got what they call like a field computer for the pitch only, and so that kind of changes things. It's I won't go into detail on it, but it changes, you know, it's where you mix hydraulic with a setting of a cable style, where the pitch is affected by speed, where you don't get just one solid feeling all the time. But that's for later on. I'll get this video out, and if it's interesting to you and you want to see more on how I do profiles, just let me know, and I'll consider doing a video on let's see, this one being a GA single prop. I'll do a couple of jets, like a business jet versus an airliner with a field system. And then I will like to go into a twin, be it a piston or a turboprop. But anyway, that's for later on, because there's a little more involved, and I've still got to study out a few things on that when it comes to a twin. So let's get going into this. I hope this can be seen okay. I do have the Brunners powered up. This flight simulator is not running. So this will give me access to the profile manager over here. This is the main page that you get when you run the Brunner. I'm not going to go into every detail on it. My main gist is to just go through the profile and let you see how I set it, and then, you know, my thinking behind it. So let's just go ahead and we'll open the profile manager. Okay, so this will be the main page you come to. Starting over here, you can add, remove profiles, create a copy of an existing one, link it. Once the simulator's up and running, you'll have a link. What I'll do is link a certain aircraft, and it'll put a check over here that's the one linked. You can delete a link, and then you can have 2 or 3 links in there. So this is showing the CRJ900 is the link here. So anyway, ignore that because the simulator is not running. So we'll go back over to this one. Alright, so this is the first page, general. I don't touch anything on flight time. I do make sure dynamic force calculation is indicated airspeed versus true airspeed. So always set the indicated. And then we have special rudder settings. On this one, all I'm doing for this particular aircraft is checking the friction. Standing still increases turning friction. I've got this one on the TBM set at 60. That means when you're sitting still and you go to push on the rudders, it's a little bit stiffer than when you're rolling. And you can play around, with the force that you like. And I like 60 on my setup. And then later on, you can get into where you're using the twin engine stuff, and you can cause changes to occur to the rudder through, which prop is running harder than the other. So it's going to be detailed. We'll take my time with that and work something up. Next, let's go to the effects page. Once again, this is for the TBM 850. We'll start over here at yoke physics. I've checked yoke is pulled forward by elevator weight. The pull force is a negative 23. That feels about right to me. I was chatting with a real CRJ pilot, and he said that on a CRJ the pull force is around 5 to 7 pounds. But this is when we get into the forces and everything, Newton meters is used. So anyway, this is just my feel, really. So whatever feels right to you is good. Next one is speed at which yoke starts to be affected by the aerodynamic forces. I've got that set at 40. So that means during the roll at about 40 knots, that yoke is moving back. Speed at which yoke gets pushed to the middle position, I've got set at 65 knots. So well before the 85 rotate, you should have the elevator in the position ready for flight. And then down here I've got yoke / rudder is affected by the prop wash. All right, so this one I learned some stuff on this just about a week or two ago, and went in and changed some things. It made a big difference. So what you want to do in setting this is get in your aircraft and then just go to go to idle, and then you'll get a number up here that will appear, and that number will correspond to where your throttle set. So on the TBM it idled around 239, and then at that point, when you take a general aviation aircraft and you run the engine up, say from 1,000 or higher, I'm not sure exactly, like on a Cessna, you got to pick your number. At a certain RPM, you want that prop to be lifting that elevator. So I've got the thrust set at 660. Now you got to watch it. It says maximal engine thrust. So it's not the max that engine's doing, but that's the point where you want that elevator lifted by the thrust of the prop only. So that's a big game changer right there, especially when you're bringing in prop wash effect on elevator and rudder, because that does also play a part in flight. So keep that in mind. And then on some aircraft, I found that it just doesn't work right, and I'll just turn that stuff off. But I like to have everything that's available due to the fact they've got a new force feedback yoke on the horizon, and I think Mark over at Sim Hangar did a preview on that and got a peek at the software. It's just in the beginning, but that kind of led me back into, they're doing everything this can do, but then I saw there wasn't a whole lot in there, but that's okay. You don't need a whole lot. The Brunner goes way in depth on stuff, and you can make two airplanes that are the same fly a little bit different. So that's kind of why I'm doing this. I'm not sitting here going to knock anything new coming or anything. I'm just trying to do a video of how I learned and set up my aircraft via this software, which I've struggled finding anybody out there doing a real solid video explanation on some of this. Okay, so next we'll move over to motor vibrations. I've got that enabled. Now this is also, once again, how you want to set this. Play around with it. I found 55 on the TBM to be just right. It also vibrates the rotor pedals along with the butt kicker, and I've got I'm a non-motion platform, but I get plenty of rumble when that engine's going. I try to watch videos, when planes are starting up, TBMs in particular, and try to catch, any of the stuff that I've got my mind on, and it stays in the back of my mind. And yeah, you do see a little bit of motion and movement of the yoke and stuff. So anyway, I've come up with that 55 setting, and I like it. It'll go up and down on different type of aircraft, but I do like some vibration in my planes. Next is ground vibrations. I struggled with this one as well. It's real hard to set and find a happy medium. Going back to the actual manual and reading and rereading, it's kind of sometimes hard, the verbiage in there. It's hard to follow exactly what can be done here. So with the ground vibrations, mainly when you're taxiing, you're going to feel little bumps like through the rudder pedals and such, but it can be very, very overbearing to the point that it's kicking the rudders, and you say that's just not realistic. So I just worked it and was real patient. So I've got it enabled. The force minimum is 1 and the force max is 3. That is because of the bump in the rotor pedals. All right, so you can bump that up, but once you get like to 4, you're gonna kind of go, that's unrealistic. But right there, you can feel them, but they're not real noticeable. It's like, okay, I'm moving. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So elevator, aileron, and rudder check. Now I hardly notice anything in the rudder due to the vibration and such. So, but anyway, I've got that in there. So my takeoff speed's 85. Now here's another one you got to watch. The ground settings, bumpy or even. If you go like any higher than where I'm at now, and I believe that's just all the way to the right and then one roll back to the left, and that just makes it just perfect for me. You go any higher than that, you're going to get some real kick in them rudder pedals that, in my opinion, is not right unless you're rolling across potholes. And that's kind of hard to imagine. But anyway, it took me a while to get that solved. I had that turned off for a long time because I just, I kept wanting to go ground settings right in the middle. I want both, but no, it's not happening. But for a regular runway, this is great. And like if I was going to be a bush pilot or something like that, I might bump that up a little bit, but I don't do bush flying. So anyway, that's where I'm at on that. Now turbulence is another one I struggled with. Now I've got a buddy, Captain Ed, he's a retired world pilot. I've had him come over on my system, and we'll go up, have him fly up in the Cessna and say, as I dialed in forces and stuff, and I said, tell me if that feels right. It was back and forth, and then finally, he came out with that's it right there. And then one day we rented a Cessna, and I went up, and the pitch especially felt a lot stiffer than what I had. So back to the drawing board. So anyway, that 5 to 7 pounds of pull force is stuck in my mind. And then that real flight in the Cessna, when I would push on the nose, like it took some pressure to push it, and it's like, wow, that's stiffer than I thought. So anyway, he said you don't feel the turbulence through the ailerons and stuff like that. And I can understand that, but then again, what's happening is the wing and tail and the elevator and everything is being affected by like updrafts, downdrafts, winds, stronger wind on one wing versus the other was going to lift the wing. And then you're going to feel it with your body. And then you're going to counter it with the control. But then again, the difference being in the simulator, you're not in motion, so you can't sense that. So in my thinking is, if I could bring that in where it's not just overpowering or overbearing, it might work. And I think I hit the sweet spot here, especially on the TBM 850. So what I did is I enabled them again, and I went in and I played around and played around and played around, and I came up with some awesome feeling in my aircraft now, both rudders and not so much pitch, but more like roll and yaw. So anyway, as I'm flying, I feel pressures, like the wings being lifted or the rudders starting to yaw just a touch, and I got to counter it, and it's really noticeable, especially when you're coming in on finals in like a side wind. It's really incredible. You watch an airplane on YouTube take off, GA style. As soon as he's off the ground, he's fighting that air. Well, that's what I'm getting, and I said that's too sweet, but it was hard to find the sweet spot. So once again, going back to the manual, trying to understand it, I came up with these numbers. So the minimum force is 1. So that means the lightest amount of wind you're going to feel, all the way up to a max force of 90. So whatever's hitting you, that's what you're going. That's the air. That's the air that you're going to feel. So I set that at 1, max force 90, and then sensitivity's 90. So that's got to be where how much you're going to feel of it or something like that. But anyway, I dial that in. It's right, pretty right in my opinion. Now here's one you got to watch: the ramp. So this is where the major change came, where it made it very, very tolerable. You go down to like 1, and then 10 is the max number. You take it up to 10, and you're like, you need extra tools and stuff to hold on to that yoke, because it's really rough and tough, and that's just unrealistic. Dropped it back to 1, and it's like, it's kind of like just a feather in the wind, real light. So a number 2 there, and you can actually feel it, and you can roll against it and hold it steady and feel it kind of rock back and forth and catch itself. It's really awesome. So I've come up with that number there. Now this is the forces. Like I say, the rudders are very, very. It's hard to describe. You got to really turn them down, so you just barely notice it. You don't want them kicking, but you do want pressures, and I found that at number 2. The aileron force is at 45. Feel free to play around with these numbers, but here's a base where someone can start at and then dial it into their liking. I'm pretty sure to say, you take 2 of the Brunner hardware side by side, one might feel a little different than the other, So anyway, stick shaker, it kind of varies on the aircraft, really. You can go in and set custom stalls. I haven't really worked on this a whole lot, so I've just basically got it enabled, 100% force, 100% stick shake, and hopefully I haven't tested it, but it should be reading the airspeed and know where the stall is and everything. Once again, just the vibrating axis is going to be elevator only, not rudder on that. And I'll probably go back in and play around with custom stalls, but that's going to be, clean and dirty speeds, all that. So I've just got that left alone. I try to stay away from a stall completely anyway. So that's got that covered. That's first page. Let's go on to the next one, which is buttons. Now these are going to be the yoke buttons only. You can bind them, just pop one open. Basically all you have to do is reach over here and let's take the pitch down here. You hit the button and that's pitch down. So you can open that one up and you can select what you want it to do. I don't use these, but if you do use them, make sure these boxes are unchecked, because that's like reverse. I always thought it meant active, but it's not. So it's like if you go pitch down, you check that, it's going to go pitch up. So anyway, I don't use those. I assign them via the simulator, and I use axis and O's when I want to get real specific on stuff. We'll move on. Analog inputs. Now this is going to be for like toe brakes. They are not force feedback toe brakes. They're spring, just like a normal set of rotor pedals, but you can do something with them. And so you just come over here and pop open the configuration. So it's a little easier to see. You can do an auto calibrate, and you can get your numbers at the bottom and top ends. And then what I do is I come in here with the lower dead zone. This is when you go to start pressing the pedal, and you press, then the pedal starts taking effect. So basically, as you're steering with your rudders and you inadvertently put a little pressure up on the toe brake, it's not going to grab. Then when you are coming in, you've got to put a little bit of brake pressure on there to get yourself slowed down. It's kind of like a car, it's just not all or nothing. It's, it takes a little bit of force on that pedal, and I achieve that. And I run this pretty much on all aircraft. That 35 buffer right there is all you need. And then this would be the other pedal. Let's see, that one's at 267. Let's see, I'll talk about this number right here. And this one was 258. So there are a little mismatch there, and that's what keeps all that stuff kind of straight. And then you know, if you get where you're toe braking and you're just yawing back and forth left and right, that's the way you can go in there and kind of straighten that airplane out when you're toe braking. Okay, so let's go into, let's skip over these two and come back, because they're going to be what I talk about the most. Yoke display. I don't have a display on my yoke, so I don't use that at all. Trim. Okay, so what I do here is I've enabled pitch, roll, and yaw. I've got pitch assigned on the yoke, and then I've got roll and yaw assigned, and I can play with velocities, but I use a different piece of hardware, and you're able to control the speed and velocity of that and how much movement. Basically stay at 100 there, and then if you get one where you're trying to, let's say, the yaw, trim the rudder, and it's a little bit faster than what you like, you can tone it down a little bit. Same thing on roll. On roll, I like a little quicker response. And then on pitch, each aircraft's different. I mean, you've got the flight model created by somebody. Then you're coming in and you're trying to tweak on that, basically how it's going to feel to you. So on the TBM, that's what I run is 100, 190. I've got use hardware trim checked. From what I understand, that's going to be part of the yoke movement in trim. But then again, I'm running a system here on this particular airplane where you've got the yoke droop when there's nothing hitting it. Then again, you've got prop wash that can affect it at a certain RPM that is not full, and you've got dynamic forces in flight. So all this ties in together. So it's a back and forth struggle till you get one feeling right, which we're going to kind of go back in when we do the axis range settings and trying to dial in the aircraft. That's another real toughie. It's going to be how much force you're feeling at speed versus high speed versus low speed versus the way the axis is. It'll get more clear here shortly. So that's where I'm at on this airplane, and you could play around with these numbers, no problemo. Shut down, just do nothing. I don't ever use that. The hydraulics over here is when you check the hydraulic box up here, it's going to ignore everything over here in effects, and it's going to be axis forces. Like you select pitch, this is how you're going to control your forces. Okay, it's a lot simpler, easier. It's a set and forget. A lot less tweaking. You might go in there and have to bump it a few times and get what feels right to you. But like I say, I just use that on certain big jets. Let's say like a 777 is going to be a fly-by-wire. I'm going to be in there on the hydraulic side of that. Something like a CRJ, I've got hydraulics running on roll and yaw, but then on the pitch side, I've got it disabled and I'm running effects off of that, actual axis force settings. It does not droop because I have like the effect for pull force off, but then the forces increase with speed on the pitch only. And that's CRJ is the only aircraft. I thought the 737 had it, but then A330 driver, I was questioning him on one of his feeds, and he was the one, let's say, that talked about it, but he said I think it was, you don't really could not tell or something like that. Anyway, so I'll have to look at my 737. I've got a field computer on it. So it is speed sensitive. Yes, it is. The CRJ is the one I think I turned off, so it is not speed sensitive, if I remember right. But anyway, we'll get into that if I ever do one on a jet. Okay, autopilot. This one you can pretty much leave alone, just check, and then you can come in here and play with your velocity and force and all that. You're on autopilot. The yoke's going to do its own movement and everything. You can put your hand. I fly VR only, so you put your hand there and you can feel it moving. Like what's going on the screen. So anyway, that's pretty straightforward. Play with the numbers till you find something you're good with. Let's go into axis range settings at this point. Now this, I've struggled. How playing around with the pitch of an aircraft is very difficult sometimes in the simulator. You think you get it right, and then the next time you fly it don't feel right. So coupled with everything I've got going on in the effects, this is what I've come up with. When you get the software, you'll notice that the reverse is checked on these two, but not this one. That's normal. Don't worry about it. Move on. You can do a lot of playing around in here. So just use caution. Don't go in too deep, too far, too fast. Take your time. Make little adjustments here and there and all that. So basically, in the range, I want everything to do its full travel. You can go in there and cut it short. I don't do that. I leave everything full travel. The only down here, I'll go ahead and talk about this backlash. Backlash is like when you've got an aircraft that's got aging cables and stuff like that. You can go in there and make that thing feel like an old airplane. Anyway, I don't do that. Maybe someday, extra time on my hand, just want to play. I have no interest in trying to do that, but some of you guys might. But that's what you can do. You can go in there and make that feel like a stretched cable, and it's gonna be like a misaligned car going down the road with loose tie rod ends and stuff like that. So good luck with that. All right. So what I do use is a dead zone, and after all the research and learning and trying to understand, the forces involved with an airplane and straight and level flight trimmed out, you should be able to take your hand off the yoke and that plane travel, a certain amount of distance before you have to retouch it due to some kind of air current or something changing, a power change, wind change, whatever, gusts, all that's going to affect that. So you're going to constantly be retrimming the aircraft. That's just a well-known thing. So there's also a point, when you get in trim flight, let's say you're in completely smooth air and you're perfectly trimmed and you're hands-free. How much does it take to break out of that point? How much pressure, how much movement to get that aircraft to react? So that's kind of how I approached it. So what I did is I went in and entered a center dead zone. And I do it in roll as well as yaw, just to give the axis a little bit of space to kind of rest, where it's not going hunting or chattering or whatever you want to call it, going back left right, front back, whatever. It's got a little spot to go in there and kind of find a smooth area. And I find on most aircraft I have to really go pretty high with a point 180,000. Anyway, that gives as you're flying along and you start to nose down a little bit, it takes some pressure to pull that nose back up. It's not an instant reaction. You got to actually get there, and it moves a little bit, and you start to feel the pressure of the airplane. And then as it raises, you relax that pressure. If you want to hold that same pitch, you trim that pressure till the pressure comes off. And it's going to be a little bit of fine tuning in there, back and forth, but you will find a sweet spot. Then you can let go, and it's riding in that zone. That point outside of that zone is what I consider or call the breakout point. So if I want to overcome my trim, how much pressure is it going to take to push that nose down or pull it up? And it's really kind of neat and noticeable. Once you're trimmed out, you can sit there and the plane starts to nose up. It's more of a proper amount of pressure to keep the thing level than all of a sudden goes up, then down, up, then down, up, then down. It's more stable, steady. Also in the turns, it's very noticeable. When you bank the aircraft, the nose wants to pitch down, so you have to add a certain amount of back pressure. Well, how much back pressure to add before all of a sudden you're climbing again, and then it's push down, pull back, push down, pull back to maintain that level turn. With this kind of setting here, it's more like you start that roll, you kick in that little bit of rudder right at the beginning, that plane starts to turn, and then all of a sudden she starts to nose drop, and you pull a certain amount of pressure, and you feel that amount of pressure, and you can hold that pressure and keep that turn right. It's really, really cool. So that's then, like I say, this is for my TBM. This will change with every aircraft depending on how it feels to me, and how much control I want of that pitch motion, and stability in that pitch, because we all know the simulator has trouble in pitch stability. So that's how I've overcome it. Now, if you've got the Brunner, I'd love it if you'd go download my profile there. It's TBM by Black Square, name Rex Farley right over here, and let me know what you think. I might be way off. I don't know. Might be spot on, but I like it that way. So that's how I dial that in. That's all I do with it. So then we got to the big one here, the axis force settings. And this one here, at first, I just went in and let's take pitch. When I first started using it, I didn't want to go in and learn all the stuff involved, mathematics involved to set up the curve myself. So I would come in and I would just increase the max speed until the flying at full speed or became where I wanted it to be. And then I started noticing it was getting at 1100-1200 knots, max speed, and I'm going, this is kind of getting crazy. So I went back and I built me a couple of standard profiles for like jets, props. You know, it's kind of closer to where I'll probably end up with each type of aircraft. But that's how I started. And then one day I sat down, I said, no, I'm going to crack the code here. So I went for it and created my own force profiles. And what I did was I came over and in this force profile mode and show the engineering units, and this is in Newton meters. Okay, so then the next question is, I have 9 positions I can control that force with speed. Alright, so the question becomes then, what's the minimum? What's the maximum amount of pressure I feel? And, you know, how fast can the airplane fly? So with the TBM, I got 300 knots max speed, okay, which is pretty close to where it really rides. Alright, and then I converted Newton meters over to pounds. And I got me one of those suitcase scales where you put it on the handle and you lift it and it shows you how much weight. And I put that on the yoke and pulled and got, you know, 5 to 7 pound pulls, and so that's what it feels like. Okay, so then I went in and I said, okay, here's my values, and then I divided by 9 and stepped it up until, you know, this is the max force I feel, this is the minimum I feel, according to, once again, the effects, which is prop wash and speed. So there's a whole lot tied in together. So that's how I came up with, it's been a while since I did it, but I could go back in there and recalculate that out. But to make things a little easier on myself, what I did was create some templates. So I've got a 737 with a field computer and then a straight 737 with hydraulics. Well, I'll always go back to the field computer version because, you know, that's the way the aircraft is. You can get speed sensitive elevators. So that's how I want it. And then each airplane, it behaves different. So I got profile for each airplane. I've borrowed other guys and looked at their work and everything, and, you know, and it didn't ever feel right to me. So through here, I got a GA base profile right here, you know, so if I get a new airplane, I start here with my GA base because it's going to be in the same speed and pressure settings as all other GAs, pretty close, and then I'll go in and fine tune all the other effects. And then, you know, you get airplanes that are longer, shorter, and they might behave a little different than, you know, and change them. So anyway, that's how I arrive at my axis force settings. Now another thing I want to touch on here, linear settings. Alright, so in my struggle to smooth out the trimming of an aircraft and the feel pretty much of the up and down of the aircraft and the behavior, the speed at which it does it and the reaction and how much trim, you know, you throw at it versus how much you got to back trim to get out of it and all that. So it's been a lot of back and forth, and I'm finally settling on this method. You know, of course, all my force settings are where they're at, but then I've come in, and then you come into where it says axis range settings, linear settings, or it's not linearity settings, and open that up, and you look on top, enable non-linear output. Okay. Minimum deflection is center of axis, so that means down here at the 0 is minimum deflection, and then this is maximum deflection, and then I can use an exponential curve. And what this is like in the simulator when you the curve down, it slows the reaction of the pitch. Makes the aircraft much more manageable. So I love to be able to come in through and do a straight line, but that's just not, doesn't feel right. You know, as you push or pull the nose, you know, the reaction is too quick sometimes. So, you know, I found the sweet spot, combined, like I said, with all the other things going on. The effects of the yoke being pulled forward by elevator weight and prop wash. Let's go back to TBM here. Got off on the wrong one. So all this is tied together. Let's go back to the range settings. Open up one area here. You see I've got this pulled all the way back. All right, so that slows that reaction down to that pitch. And then with the speed of the trim setting over here, and then the forces that are acting on it, my dead zone and all that, I've got a pretty well, I can balance out a plane and have some good hand flying fun with it, and realize, you know, hey, this is probably the closest thing to real as I'm going to get. So that's how I've done that. Now you can kick it back up to a linear mode at a certain speed. I've not played around with that, don't need to. I'm totally happy where I'm at. You can also do a custom curve where you can go in there and do all that, dial it in, you know, per getting it exact. I don't have the time to do that. But like I say, with the numbers I did over in the forces setting with pitch, and these numbers here, Newton meters, and then convert to pounds. That way I can understand the pressure amount. I understand, you know, 1 pound of pressure versus 9.5 Newton meter pressure, you know. Okay, so that's how I've come to that. So anyway, let's close that back down. So then same thing on the back to the range here, same thing on roll. I did the same thing, except that, you know, enable nonlinear, minimum deflection there, and then the curve's different here because you know, most airplanes react a little quicker on the roll. So anyway, you know, you can tell the difference between a sporty TBM versus, you know, something that's not so sporty. So you can go in there and, you know, I try to keep that up close to straight as I can, but, you know, sometimes it just doesn't feel right. And then on yaw, we'll take a look at that. You know, if you've got, well, so this is for Brunner. This one here, you know, it's pretty much dead on. You know, put a little pressure on the rotor, you should get a reaction. It does not take much, especially when you're at speed. So that's how I did it, and it's been a long process. I've had my head in this software for 4 or 5 years now, and these are the settings that I finally have accepted as probably the best I'm going to be able to make it, incorporating all the features that are available. And each aircraft's different, so, you know, it's kind of a cumbersome thing to go and buy another airplane, because, you know, you're going to want to fly the crap out of it, but yet you're going to have to spend an enormous amount of time dialing one in. And it's going to be test flight after test flight after test flight. And then once I got up to these settings where I'm at now, has just been, you know, it's just been gruesome. So, you know, I'm here. I'm where I can jump in this TBM right now and say, okay, this is it. This is what the TBM's like, you know, and do or die. And it's hand flyable. Enjoy hand flying it. It's a lot of fun, and then kick it on autopilot when I got to do extra pilot duties, you know, so I ain't got to worry so much about keeping the thing on the numbers, you know. So anyway, but then when I want, I can kick that autopilot off and hand fly it, and it's really comfortable to me. So I hope this kind of helps out with anybody out there. I'm not a software engineer. I've just been playing around with this stuff for a long time. I do have, like I said, the TBM 850 up at the Brunner site, and I did put one up on the Piper Arrow 3. Find it. There it is. Yeah, Piper Arrow 3 non-turbo. The two GAs I fly the most, prop-wise. Considering the Duke, I'm going to wait for a few more reviews on it and everything, but it's got a different kind of for climbing. If I recall, it does not have vertical speed as you would think normal. It's got an ATT mode where you hit the ATT and then roll the trim wheel up and it holds it there, something like that. But anyway, it's a little bit different. So I want to get a good twin engine turboprop and then start working on the special rudder effects. When you pull a throttle back, what's that going to do to your tail back there. And anyway, but that's for later on. So right now, I can do another video if anybody's interested on my Piper Arrow 3. That'd be nice, if you do download it and try it and give me your reaction to it. Let me know what you think. It flies really well too. But those are my two favorite GAs. I do my jets up here too. I've got my 737 dialed in, but then I've learned a few new things over here. I might go back and tweak it a little bit before I do an upload on it. But it'll be a while because I'm having too much fun in my TBM right now. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful to somebody out there. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I strictly fly in VR and just like doing videos and having fun flying and showing the way I fly. And, I'm getting into the say Intentions air traffic control software. Just absolutely loving it. Been waiting on that for decades. Something that awesome. Being patient, letting it get developed. Anxious to see the Beyond ATC come out. They just released a video the other day. And did mention, it'll not have a virtual reality window at release, and that I consider I have to have that because I got to read what they're saying. I'm not at the point where I've got the notepad going yet, and like a real person would be in an airplane. But as time allows, I'll get that developed where eventually I'll get there. So I strictly fly virtual reality, no other way for me. This is what it's all about. Enjoy what I'm doing, and I hope you found some use out of the video. We'll hope to catch you on the next one. See y'all later.